Everybody. Welcome to More Books with B. Sharice. I am your host, B. Sharice Moore. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of my Black History Month recommendations. So, this is my first video this week, and I promise you that I'll do another tomorrow. And I'm going to continue to highlight authors from the diaspora who are creating fantastic books and other educational materials for your children to use. All right. So, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, like, comment, share, and subscribe. So I'm going to just jump right on in. So the book that I've chosen to highlight this week is dear to my heart because I actually developed the curriculum for it this past summer for the county I work for. So I'm not just a teacher, I also write curriculum, and I wrote curriculum this past summer, and I was able to create the curriculum for Brown Girl Dreaming. So this is the book, Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. All right, and as you can see, it's filled with all of my little notes from this summer that I did not remove because I know they're going to help me to actually teach this book this quarter. So I introduced my students to the book today, and I want to tell you a little bit about Brown Girl Dreaming. Brown Girl Dreaming, first of all, as you can see, is very decorated. It's won several awards, National Book Award, the Newbery Honor Book Award, and of course the Social Change winner for the Coretta Scott King Awards. All right. Um, I'd never quite read a book like Brown Girl Dreaming before. Um, and that was a good thing. First of all, Brown Girl Dreaming is a memoir. Okay, so it is a memoir, but it is a memoir that is told in verse. So even though the length appears to be intimidating, it is a book of poems. Okay, so it is a much easier read than you would think. Okay. And I love novels in verse. I love this memoir in verse. I probably read it in about 2 weeks. Now, granted, that was during the summer when I didn't have to grade papers, but I read it in 2 weeks. I was also still in grad school and still a mom. And I was able to just kind of speed right on through it. And I read it with two sets of eyes. I read it as a person who was developing a curriculum for it to be taught by other teachers, not just myself. And I also read it for entertainment. The one thing I loved about Brown Girl Dreaming is it is chock full of history. And if you have been watching any of my videos, you know how much I love history. Okay. So Jacqueline Woodson begins telling her story at the beginning. She starts with her birth, all right, in Ohio. And then she travels in this pattern from Ohio to South Carolina, where she lived some time with her grandparents, and then to New York City when she moves with her mother. So there's this constant, I'm going to use the term Sankofa. So for those of you who know what the Sankofa bird means, the Sankofa basically means to make sure that we remember the past, always remembering the past, always reaching backward. And that's what this memoir in verse does. It's constantly reaching backward to her roots, reaching back to the history of this country, reaching back to the the teachings of her grandparents because she was raised a pretty devout Jehovah's Witness. And the book is just entails so much. It talks about grief. It talks about mass incarceration. It touches on mass incarceration. It touches on relationships and, of course, religion. And also, as I said before, history. And I was able to pull so many things out. I even was able to create a science project based on one of the poems in this book. And I think that this book is like, if it were a food, it would be molasses. It's thick. It is extremely heavy in some parts. And it's such a thoughtful memoir. And though Jacqueline Woodson is talking, of course, about herself being raised, during the 1960s and the 1970s, which is something I can't really relate to. I'm a bit younger than that. I still was able to reflect on my own childhood, my own upbringing in South Jersey while reading this. And when she talked about, corporal punishment and, the significance of her name and wanting to be a writer and making sure that she pursued that goal, in spite of the fact that she had these two siblings who are extraordinarily brilliant, really made me reflect on my own journey toward becoming a writer. And I loved this book. And honestly, writing the curriculum for this book was probably some of the easiest work I've ever done. The curriculum almost wrote itself. That's how rich and powerful it was. Even within the first two poems, she discusses Malcolm and Martin and Ruby Bridges and Rosa Parks and Baldwin. And so for tonight's homework, my students have to write a poem based on their births. And I asked them to interview their parents, talk to their parents about where they were born, and then also research their birth date. I want them to think about the climate, what was going on during their birth. What was the world, grappling with. And it turned into kind of sort of a mini research project, even though I told them that they only had to write, a 10-line poem. So there's so much you can do with this book. And I would recommend it for grade 6 and up, because she definitely talks about race quite a bit in the book. And, you can't talk about the 1960s and not talk about race. The 1960s in America, it's pretty much impossible unless you want to just be willfully obtuse, you know. And I want them to just think about, what the world looked like when they were born. And I want them to have that opportunity to interview their parents and their grandparents and other people that are close to them so that they can get an insight on the world that they were born into and what it looked like at that time. So I have already informed Ms. Venker, my librarian and my makerspace go-to person, that my students will, upon finishing this book, and we should be finished around April, so they're going to create their own handmade chapbooks. While I was at Rutgers University, I'm a graduate of Rutgers University. I received my English degree with a concentration in creative writing from Rutgers University in 2001. I took a Black poetry class with Dr. Regina Jennings. Fantastic professor, one of the best professors I've ever had in my entire life. And one of our culminating projects was to create our own chapbook. Now, she told us that we could just, type it up. She wanted us to literally add, I think we had to choose 10 poems that we'd written over the course of the semester. She wanted us to edit them and then create a book out of it. So I kind of took it a step further. I didn't want to just, type it up and hand it in. I actually created a book, and I went to Michael's. I remember that very clearly, even though it was almost 20 years ago. I bought some string, and I bought some like this paper that had these creases in it, and I created a book, and I actually still have it, and I glued on different, jewels onto the pages and seashells and all kinds of things. And I really cherish that book. I really cherish it. And I look back at how my writing has grown. And what I would like to do is I would like for my students to do the same thing. I want them to be able to say, you know what? These poems are memoirs. So, I'm asking them specifically to create a chapbook that is a memoir of verse, in verse of their own. And I want them to be able to go back and say, oh, wow, I wrote this about, how I felt about my family and how I felt about, friendship and how I felt about the world at the time when I was 11 and 12 years old. So that is what I'm going to ask them to do. And they've already started. So tonight, they had to write their first poem that they're going to include in this chapbook. And I'm excited to see what'll happen. I'm excited to see what they come up with. And of course, later on, I will share all those finished projects with you so that you can see them. So what I'm going to do in the in the description section I will add more information on Jacqueline Woodson. This is not the only novel that she's written. Well, this is a memoir, but this is not the only book she's written. So I'll give you some insight into that. I'll give you a link. And I will also link you to some of the other activities that I designed for my students so that you can use them. So again, grades 6 to 12. I'm not sure if struggling readers will be open to reading this on their own, but you can try. All right, you can try. But your voracious readers, this is something they'll love. Students that love poetry, I think this is something they'll eat up. And again, it's not that intimidating, but it is chock full of history and some other deeper subjects that you'll need to go into, a little deeper if you are a student or your parent. Okay. So Jacqueline Woodson, Brown Girl Dreaming, grades 6 and up. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another book for Black History Month. Take care.